Hey everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a large family living off-grid in Australia, and we are doing Christmas cooking, or cooking in general over the Christmas season, and making a point of filming them in their own videos, however you want to look at it. The purpose is to try and get more videos out with single subjects so that people can actually use them for referencing, and I can use them for the website and things like that. And because it drives me to put more videos out, it drives us to eat more Christmas treats in the lead up to Christmas instead of trying to cram them all in that week of Christmas. And it's fun. So come along and join us. Now, I love biscotti. It is one of my most favorite biscuits. I love the texture of it. I love how crispy it is. I like the fact that it's, generally speaking, not excessively sweet. It's generally like it's still a biscuit, but it just isn't overpoweringly sweet. And depending on what flavors you make it to, depends on how much sweetness there is in it. But I adore it with a coffee. I just like that, having that snack with it, but it's not so sweet that it impacts the taste of your coffee and things like that. So I have been doing some research on some biscottis, on different types of biscottis, and I found a lady who makes, I'll try and find her link. It's a nonna, an Italian nonna, and she does shorts and stuff with her granddaughter, I think, is the one who's filming them. And she makes a few different biscottis, and one that she makes is a coffee one, and it's actually made to a texture that goes into a loaf tin for the first bake, and I've never seen that before, so that's what we're going to give a go. She also has one that I will try that is the standard, forming into logs and baking, but this one that went into a tin just really, it tickled me because it was something different. So it is a coffee biscotti, which I think is perfect. And yeah, we're going to give it a go. So the first thing we need to do though is we need to roast some almonds. So I'm going to get some almonds on a baking tray and get them in the oven just to roast for 15 minutes, I suppose. And then we will rough chop them and get them to use for the biscotti. So let's get the almonds together first. All right, so we got whole almonds. We're going to do 300 grams of them. So I'm just going to spread them out on the baking tray and throw them in sort of 160 to 180 for sort of 15-20 minutes just to get some color on them. All right, so those almonds are almost done. So we're going to mix up everything else. We need 6 eggs, which I have already cracked into a bowl. I'm just going to grab a spatula. They've been sitting there for a couple of minutes. They just got a bit of a skin on them. I just need to scrape them out. So we've got 6 eggs. We are having to be very careful with eggs at the moment. The ambient temperature is enough to incubate eggs. So we have to watch that. All right, we want 200 grams of sugar. Now, I didn't realize, but I'm almost out of raw sugar, so I'm going to have to use coconut sugar for a few things, and this is a good one to use that with. So Darryl can grab me some more raw sugar, but for the moment, I'm going to use coconut sugar in this one. So we want 200 grams, because, as I said, biscotti doesn't need to be super sweet, and the coconut sugar will complement the flavor of that as well. 200 grams of sugar. We want to, we'll blend this together. I'll grab instant coffee as well, but I'll grab the paddle for the mixer. Alrighty, let's get these two blended. Not plugged in, that's, isn't that every video? Alright, let's get those two together, and then we want 2 tablespoons of instant coffee. One, 2. So 2 tablespoons of instant coffee in there. We're going to put half a teaspoon of baking powder. It looks like I need new baking powder. And actually, this recipe calls for self-raising flour, which I don't have. I only have plain flour, so I'm actually going to add a couple of teaspoons worth of baking powder to compensate for the lack of self-raising flour. So we got those mixing through. Now, that's fine. We're going to grab the almonds out. And these smell toasted enough to me. I would normally chop them slightly, but biscotti, it isn't that big a deal because you're going to be slicing the biscotti. So you are going to be chopping these anyway. So I think I might just throw them in. So we're just going to throw them into the sugar and everything mix. They're sizzling a little bit. And we're going to mix that up. Oops. Just like that. Grab the couple that I managed to send flying. All right, and then we just need to add the flour. So we want 450 grams of flour. This is frothing a bit because I added all that baking powder. I probably should have added it when I added the flour, but it's going to do the same thing. And this is just all-purpose flour. And then we're just going to put it back on to come into, it looked like a really wet kind of a dough, which is why this was an odd one for me for biscotti, because normally biscotti is a moldable dough, not a wet one. So that's why we're going to test this recipe out, because I thought it was interesting. So that has all come together into a wettish dough, and it's broken up some of the nuts in there just in that because of the heat in that actually. So now we're going to line a loaf tin, make it nice and easy to pull out of the tray. I'm just going to use half the baking paper that we already used. So I'm just going to place that in there. And where did I put there's my scraper. So this is what it looks like. Definitely a wetter dough than my normal biscotti experience, but that's the whole purpose of this. It came from an Italian nonna on the internet though, so you know, that's, you know, you have to take that with a grain of salt, but appeared to be an authentic Italian nonna. And so we're going to give it a go. Alright, so it's actually thicker than it appeared on her video, so we will see. So what she did was she put it in a loaf tin, and then she used a bit of water if necessary to smooth out the top surface. I feel like this might be a bit more than one loaf tin worth. Let's have a look, because we don't want it too thick, because with biscotti what we're going to do is we're going to slice it into the little strips that then get rebaked. So I don't want it too thick in here. So, and I'm just going to wet my fingers and then just sort of press it in, and we'll see how it feels. Yeah, I don't think it's enough for two actually, but I think I probably could have done with a slightly different loaf tin, but just means that the fingers are going to be a bit differently shaped. We will, I said, we're testing it out. I must say the batter tastes very good, just like that. So that's what we're going to do, and then this goes in the oven for about 30 minutes at about 180, and then it'll cool and we'll cut it like we normally do with biscotti. So we're going to give that a go anyway. It smells amazing, the batter tastes wonderful, so it's just going to be about the texture. All right, our biscotti cooked for 30 minutes. Now, I still feel like it's a bit more than should be in this tin, and I'm a little concerned that it may not have cooked all the way through, because it's a little bit more than I think should be in the tin, like in one loaf, but we won't know until we have a look, will we? So that is the biscotti. I don't know, until I try and cut it, I'm not really going to know, am I? So I'm going to let it cool a little bit more, but that's what it looked like when it was cooked. I'm going to let it cool just a touch more. We don't want it too much because it's harder to cut, but we don't want it too hot because it crumbles when it's hot. So you want it just the right spot. So I'm going to let this cool for a little bit longer. It's so warm today. I'm going to put it on a rack, pull it out of that tin, or just balance it on the top of the tin rather than in the tin, and let that cool. Now, size-wise, this is going to be some significant slabs of biscotti. So yeah, I think I don't know. I think I maybe narrower tins or half in and have them shorter. I don't know. We will see how it goes. It looks great. I'm going to do probably some coffee white chocolate to drizzle on it or dip one end in it, I think. So we will get there as well. But this is what it looks like fresh out of the oven, and we're going to let it cool a bit more. Then we'll slice it and we'll bake it. All right, let's give a go at slicing up our biscotti. I have a baking tray with paper on it, and what we want is we want some fairly thin slivers. Now that one's thicker than I'd like. It's definitely a little moist in the middle, so we'll see how easy it is to slice. Definitely a bit wet in the middle still, so we may have to cut them just a little bit thicker than I would normally cut them, and it may take quite a bit longer for its second bake than normal. Right, so I've got a tray and a half, slightly thicker, slightly larger biscotti than I would like, but it's going to be edible. Probably do it once more though, because I think it sort of, the taste profile seems amazing. So I'm going to stick this in the oven. It's normally sort of 20 minutes, turned halfway. It might take a bit longer. We'll see how we go. And this is how the biscotti turned out. Now, because it was undercooked in the middle and these pieces were a bit bigger than I expected, it had to be low, slow cooked for a really long amount of time. And it has a slight bit of a, it's not burnt, but there's definitely an overcooked factor to it. It's still going to be tasty. We're still going to eat it, but I'm definitely going to try making this one again and doing it in those two different lots, because this definitely didn't seem to, work quite the same way. But yes, it is biscotti. It's got a really nice crunch to it. It's got lots of these roasted almonds in it, and yeah, this is how it ended up. Alrighty, future me coming in. So the biscotti that I made, I'm going to cut into the video somewhere here. So the biscotti that I made ended up, it was too much in that loaf tin, and when I baked it, it wasn't baked all the way through. It was still raw a bit in the middle. I still sliced it up, but I couldn't slice it as thin as I wanted because of the raw bit, and then I had to bake it for a really long time on low to get it to crisp up properly, and in doing so it's overcooked. It's edible, but not great. So we're going to give it another go. So what I've done is I've mixed up the same batch of batter again, but this time I'm going to split it up. So it tastes amazing. So I really want this to work so that you guys, if you want to try coffee biscotti, can, make it work too. So I've got two of my cast iron loaf tins here. They're narrower, higher, and I'm going to split the dough between the two of them. And then that way it's going to be less height. It should cook in the right amount of time, and we should get the right consistency to be able to do that second bake properly, rather than as a lengthy second bake. So I don't know how exactly I'm pinning these two videos together, but I will show you the fail parts of the previous batch. So it came out of the oven and it was it looked fine, but it was, when I sliced it open, it was very, very wet in the middle. So it ended up requiring some finagling to get it to slice into pieces, and I couldn't slice it as thin as I would like my biscotti to be sliced. And then the time it took to bake that second time to dry out was really high because of the fact that half of it wasn't cooked properly. So it all just, it led to a biscotti that just wasn't real pleasant. The kids have still been picking at it and eating it, and it is still edible. We were just laughing to Darryl then about how, you're awfully far away from what I'm doing. I was just laughing to Darryl then about how use almost as many calories chewing it as you eating. That's the kind of amount of work that it takes to consume. Now, I don't know if I used coconut sugar yesterday or raw sugar, but I've run out of raw sugar, so I used coconut sugar, which is why I think it's really dark. I don't know if it was this dark last time or not, but so we've got it in the two tins fairly evenly. what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my little container of water to smooth it out. So I'm just going to smooth it out, and we're using just wet fingers so that it's not sticking, and smoothing it evenly like we did last time, just in these 2 pans instead of 1. So let's see how this goes. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to throw these in the oven for the 30 minutes at 180, and then I'll bring you back when I'm slicing them. All right, so this is what the biscotti looks like after the first bake. A much better size than the last lot, I must say. So now what we need to do is we need to slice it. Now I want my really good serrated knife for this job, so let me find that. All right, we got a tray with some baking paper. We're going through a lot of baking paper this month, aren't we, ladies? So I got a baking tray with baking paper, and all I'm going to do is attempt to cut it into really nice, thin pieces. And then it will just go back in the oven for about another 20 minutes, and it should be perfect. That is the idea anyway. So we're just going to very carefully cut, gently cut nice thin pieces. Ideally, I probably let this cool a little bit longer, but it is 5 to 5 and I need to start dinner shortly. So yeah, see, it's a little warm still. All right, I filled 2 trays worth of them. They're still not quite as cooked in the middle as I would like. So this, as I said, this was that Nonna's recipe. It's new. It's going to be a trial and error. We're going to put them in for 20 minutes. I think these will still work a whole lot better than the other one did. But I will do a normal batch of biscotti, like my standard style, as well later in the month, because I really like biscotti anyway, and we'll compare the two in that sense as well. So putting these in the oven about 20 minutes for the second bake, and then they should be done. Second bake, pretty near perfect. There is a couple of pieces that still have that, but it's cooked, it's nice and solid. It's more just that it's aesthetically not as pleasing because I crumpled it a bit when I cut it because it wasn't cooked quite all the way through. But it has a nice snap to it. The almonds are lovely and roasted and toasty. It's a coffee flavour. It's sweet but not overly sweet. It's really pleasant. So I'm happy with it. It was a different style of biscotti than what I have ever made before. As I said, it was from that Italian Nonna. I will find the short because I bookmarked it, and I will share and I will link it. But it was worth trying. I think I'll stick to my standard biscotti in future because it seemed to be a little hard to judge in the baking being in the tins rather than just in the logs and things like that. But we will definitely enjoy this, and it was, yeah, it was worth trying. And Christmas is an excuse to try all these things. So that is how it turned out.